is really interesting. So it's why RuneScape's first cartel collapsed, the fall of Blue Rose 13X. And it's like, who is Blue Rose 13X? I don't even know. But apparently she made a fucking cartel in old school RuneScape. Like, fuck yeah. Wait, is this OSRS? I don't even know. But are you ready? 3, 2, 1.
The first year of RuneScape's history, there was one player who controlled all of the best gear and weapons in the game, Blue Rose 13X. She was RuneScape's first celebrity.
This is RuneScape 1? Oh, it's RuneScape 1, guys. The fact that there's someone out there who controlled an entire fucking like economy is crazy.
And her name was constantly surrounded in controversy.
Okay.
This is the never-before-told story of the rise and fall of her cartel. Blue Rose started playing RuneScape almost immediately after the game launched in January of 2001. Nobody knows an exact date, but funnily enough, we do know that she was exactly the 1,242nd player to make an account. Pretty much immediately, she took an interest in the mining and smithing skills that few players were training at the time due to how tedious they were. While mining, she met another player named Demonic. Demonic was a founding member of a mining and smithing clan called Steel Corporation Inc. This clan had also founded one of the game's first ever and soon to be most popular fan sites, tip.it.
I'm just saying, guys, Steel Corporation Inc. is the perfect name for like a mining and smithing like focus guild, huh?
Demonic was impressed by Blue's account, asked her to join, and she agreed. This was a really good choice, because it wasn't long until Blue would become the best smith in the game. By March, she was level 60 smithing, which would place her at rank 1 on the high scores. This was a really, really big deal for reasons we'll get into in a little bit. But first, how did she get to rank 1 so quickly? The early levels were likely done by herself, just mining the ores she needed, smelting them at a furnace, and smithing them at an anvil. Later, she was partially funded by Steel Corp. Demonic would mine ores and run them over to her at a furnace for free, so she didn't have to spend any time mining. But why would he do that? Demonic was just a few smithing levels behind Blue, so why not keep the ores to himself and raise his own level? Well, Blue's rank of Demonic's babe on the tip.it forums might explain things. Pretty soon after they met, they started dating.
Why can't I find a guy who would like mine ores for me so I can raise my levels instead of me having to like mine ores for like my exes? What is this universe? I hate this.
They even met in person once, but didn't know what to talk about, so they just quietly played RuneScape together instead. Blue's smithing level, 60. Her and Demonic's chemistry level, solid 12. When Demonic was busy, Blue Rose also had another unnamed player who would mine for her, although this player would quit the game soon after. It's also likely she used the profit she made from selling her smith goods and bought some of the ore she needed from random players. Regardless of how she got the ore, she would soon become the most important person in RuneScape because of her high level. Smithing was the key to success and wealth in the game at the time. But why? Well, the biggest reason smithing was so important is that, unlike today, most of the gear in the game couldn't be purchased in shops or dropped by monsters. You had to make it yourself or buy it from other players who could. The game also revolved around player versus player combat. When you signed up for a RuneScape account, you had the option of being a PKer or a non-PKer. PKers would have player versus player combat enabled everywhere at all times,
that's just stressful.
Non-PKers were safe everywhere, but were missing out on the most exciting content the game had to offer at the time. You could switch.
I'm a be for reals. I always thought that it was kind of ridiculous how that was like the most like exciting content, and it's literally just two guys like poking a stick at each other. Okay, might be fucked up, might be a little fucked up of me to say that, but honestly, I was like low key, this shit is hilarious. Tell me I'm wrong.
Switch between being a PKer and non-PKer twice, and then your final choice would become permanent. At the time, banks could also only hold coins, so death was a really big setback. If you died, you'd lose every item you owned aside from your 3 most valuable. PKers with the strongest gear would have a huge advantage over others and have the best chance at defending their items. Imagine not being able to use a bank these days with how many important items exist now. Who would want to play like that? that just sounds terrible. The only way to get the best gear was to get it from Blue. She had become the go-to smither for just about everyone in RuneScape. Players would bring her the materials needed to make the item they wanted, and she would smith it for them for free. It was a win for both sides, as players would get the items they wanted and she would get free XP. Blue's smithing service became so popular that she became the game's first celebrity. Anyone who played the game for a considerable amount of time knew her name. She was sort of like Zezima before Zezima started playing. She became so well known that players on the tip.it forums would even begin to write fan fiction about her, although she very understandably didn't like that. While Blue's services saved players countless hours of smithing, there's actually a service that can save you countless hours in the kitchen. Today's sponsor, Factor, and they're ready to eat meals. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and just that feeling of, I don't want to cook today.
By the way, remember guys, we're watching all of the ads because we are watching his content for free. The least we can do is watch the ads. Also, hey, if I ever go to NA, Factor, please sponsor me. I will literally turn on my camera and eat that food on stream for you. Factor BB, please call me. Thank you.
Tonight. There's over 35 meals to choose from each week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. They're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, meaning you save more time. Factor now offers loads of snack options too, like breakfast, smoothies.
I'm cooked. They have cheesecakes. Factor has cheesecakes. I'm cooked, guys.
Juices in small bites. When life gets hectic, Factor is also flexible. Change your order up with plans from 4 to 18 meals every week, or reschedule or pause your deliveries at any time. Get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your first month of orders using my link. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Malicious players would also begin signing up with usernames that looked like hers, stand near her in-game, and try to steal resources from players who weren't paying close enough attention when trying to use Blue's services.
Damn.
The game's only volunteer moderator at the time, Rab, says that half of his job was handling Blue Rose impersonators. Before he was given the power to ban players, he would teleport them to the moderator room on top of Al-Kharid's palace, an area that he could interrogate them in and they couldn't teleport out of. A big reason that Rab would step down from being a moderator later in 2001 was because of how much of a hassle it was banning all of these impersonators himself.
That is insane. The fact that there's an actual interrogation area. The fact that there's an interrogation area, the fact that people were impersonating her for I mean, I guess impersonating people for resources isn't that uncommon when you really think about all of the guys on MapleStory who pretend to be girls, right? And then they're all they just catfish guys. It's not that weird, but also yikes, that's kind of insane.
The game had more fake roses than a dollar store the day before Mother's Day. In May of 2001, Jagex would do a big and much needed rework to the smithing skill. So you know how today you need 99 smithing to make a rune plate body, and people think that's a little steep of a requirement? Well, prior to this rework, you needed 99 smithing to make a steel plate body. The levels needed to make things were just all over the place. You only needed 55 smithing to make a mithril dagger, but a steel kite shield needed 84. It was really weird. So on May 8th, Jagex would rework everything's level requirements to the same ones we have today. This would inadvertently be doing Blue Rose a big favor. Tons of items had their smithing level requirements lowered, so she would unlock the ability to make gear that she previously couldn't. As Blue smithed more and more powerful items, and the game's player base grew, her popularity would grow with it. She would gain a lot of fans who would mine ore for her for free every so often to help her increase her smithing level. Although some weren't doing it just out of kindness, as you'll see in a moment. When she unlocked the ability to smith adamant square shields, she was absolutely hounded by players who wanted one as soon as possible. She was receiving constant messages about them and struggled to keep up with the demand. She posted on the tip.it forums that for a while while, playing was hellish due to the sheer volume of people. Some of her fans who had given her free items in the past would also now try to call in favors to skip the line and get new items first. Here's a rant Blue posted to the forums about a player who had helped her out in the past. This player got mad when Blue wouldn't promise him what would soon be the game's first ever adamant hatchet. She didn't name who the player was specifically, but this player would out themselves by commenting, "That's being a bit bitchy, ain't it?" This player, who went by the name Sausage Dog, would make a new thread the next day called Apologies. I can't spell. Videos about 2001 RuneScape are quickly becoming my favorite to make because half of the forum posts I read while researching are just kids yelling at each other over pixels with forum signatures like Bin Laden will meet his maker soon.
2001 is insane, by the way. Bro, I don't even think I was like old enough to like walk in like 2001. That is insane.
And George Bush quotes. In late June of 2001, Blue would reach 80.
I'm gonna be for reals. I don't know much about US politics, right? I'm really bad at stuff like that, right? The only thing I know about George Bush is that he dodged a shoe that was thrown at him and then dodged again. That's like the only thing I know about him. I'm gonna be for reals. I was like, I remember seeing that and I was like insanely impressed, but that's also all I know about him.
81 smithing. If she drank a dwarven stout, which would temporarily raise her smithing level by
Whoa.
1, she could now make adamant kite shields. But when players began asking her to make them, she told them all no. For the first time ever, she would be smithing this item for Demonic and her friends only. But
well,
why?
Yeah.
Well, she probably didn't want to repeat the hellish mess of making adamant square shields for free. But it's actually a bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
Prior to Blue reaching the level for adamant kite shields, someone had discovered a duplication glitch that allowed them to flood the market with adamant square shields and other items that only Blue could make.
Okay.
This really annoyed her, so she vowed to only give these new shields to her friends that she knew she could trust. That way, if another duplication glitch occurred, they wouldn't flood the market. She even kept track of the exact count of adamant kite shields and who she gave them to. If you ask me, this was just an excuse and she really just didn't want to have to spend weeks making shields for thousands of screaming middle schoolers.
I mean, that makes sense though.
This was the true start of her monopoly. What was then the best shield in the game could be made by her and her alone. And only the most privileged and connected players in the game could get one. Pressing the like button on this video, however, is free for anyone. This exclusivity only made people want these shields even more. She'd get tons of messages from players offering her just about anything to get one. So the same day that she said she would only be selling these new shields to her friends, she would make another post auctioning off just one. The initial bid was for 700 of any type of rune as long as they weren't the basic elemental ones that could be bought from shops. This might not sound like much, but this is an extremely high ask. Obtaining non-elemental runes in Classic was incredibly tough. I actually have an entire video devoted to Classic's rune shortage. If you want to watch that one, I will link it again at the end of the video. The bidding on Blue's auction thread got up to 1,500 runes before the backup copy of the thread I have ends, but it likely sold for much higher. The reason
I'm gonna be for reals. If there was a person in a game who had like a monopoly, like over something, I would totally expect like their first few items to go to like their partner or their friends, right? Like that only makes sense to me, but I don't know. Maybe people just don't get it.
The reason I think so is because a little over 2 weeks later, another shield would get auctioned off, where bids climbed to 900,000 GP before, again, the backup cuts off. This might not sound that crazy, but you have to remember that 1, this is an adamant kite shield, an item that sells for about 6,000 gold today, and 2, 900,000 gold was much, much, much harder to obtain back then than today. The adamant kite wasn't even that much better than the widely available adamant square shield, but people were willing to pay anything to be someone who had the best shield in the game. Think of it like people who own the Third Age pickaxe today. It's the same exact thing as a dragon pickaxe, but sells for 12 billion GP. Except there's a small piece of information I've left out until now. The icon of the adamant kite shield that I've been showing is actually just what it looked like in your inventory. When you actually equipped the shield, it looked looked exactly the same as an adamant square shield. The real adamant kite shield was the friends you made along the way, because only they could confirm to others that you actually owned one. Now knowing how much money she could make, Blue's attitude when it came to adamant kite shields and every new item she could smith going forward would change. She would smith you anything you wanted if you could make her an offer she was interested in. The two main things that she wanted were ores and runes, and lots of them. Her prices weren't cheap, but if you wanted the best of the best, you had no other choice. Now, keep in mind that banks could still only hold coins.
I'm gonna be for reals. It makes sense because she's the only one who can do it, right? Like, I'm not surprised that she's power tripping. It only makes sense because people were like heavily taking advantage of her in the past. So now she's like, well, I'm raising my prices, take it or leave it. And it's very much a, well, you know, if she's the only one who can do it, it is a take it or leave it kind of situation. So, ooh, I get it. I get her. I get her corruption arc. Let's fucking go.
So how could you trade, let's say, 500 coal to her when you could only hold 30 items at a time? Some of you classic players might be thinking, why not use certificates? By speaking to NPCs known as certers, you could turn raw resources into certificates. Certificates were basically a primitive form of banknotes. If you gave 5 pieces of coal to Giles in Draenor, he would give you 1 coal certificate. You could then trade the certificate to another player, they could turn it back into Giles, and get 5 pieces of coal. These certificates would also stack. You could technically be holding 500 pieces of coal by having 100 coal certificates, and it would only take up 1 inventory slot. Problem solved. Except certificates didn't exist until December of 2001. So the only way to trade 500 pieces of coal would be to trade some to Blue, mine some more, trade that over, mine some more, and so on. This just wouldn't work. It was too time consuming. So Blue had to get creative. She wanted all of the items traded over to her in the form of mules. Mules were accounts made with the sole purpose of holding items. If you wanted to trade 500 coal, you'd sign up for 17 RuneScape accounts. You'd mine the coal on your main account and trade it all over to each mule account until the inventories were all full of coal. Then you would send the login details of each account to Blue. She'd log in and trade the coal to her main account as she needed it, and she would give you whatever item you purchased. That may sound absolutely nuts and overcomplicated, but it was legitimately the best way of trading bulk amounts of items at the time. Also, luckily membership didn't exist yet, so you weren't spending your whole allowance on this process. Around this time, Blue would also sign up for her own mule account. She would have 1 or a few accounts mining resources, and then have her mules run them over to wherever her main account was smithing. Playing like this was actually a common practice at the time, even if it sounds incredibly cheaty, and quite a few of the game's top players would do it. The game's creator, Andrew Gower, didn't like it, but nobody was actually banned for it. In late July of 2001, Blue would reach level 83 smithing, meaning with a boost, she could now make the adamant 2-handed sword. This item had existed since the launch of the game back in January, but there was no way to obtain one until now. This was also the best weapon in the game, so players would be absolutely scrambling to try and get their hands on one. High-level players would be willing to pay anything to get one, and as usual, Blue's friends and supporters would get theirs for free. But then something unexpected happened. Approximately a day or two after Blue accomplished this, Jagex would release Runite items into the game for the first time ever.
You know?
Blue accomplished this.
Hold up. I always thought that this was how like Americans do like LAN parties. I'm gonna be for reals. Like it's this or that one picture of the guy taped to the ceiling. I feel like you know what I'm talking about. But I thought that this was a very like American thing. Cause like in Asia our LAN parties are very different. Like it's like rows of like PCs, you know? Kinda was it is? Really? Imagine the bots of today. Honestly, if they had the bots, right, like Blue Rose could like single-handedly run like a cartel on her own. Like she just have like bots like farm ore for her and it'd be like perfect. Okay, you know what? That makes sense.
release runite items into the game for the first time ever. The rune longsword, rune shortsword, rune mace, rune chain body, rune skirt, and rune plate legs could now be purchased from the Champions Guild rune shop, and you could get the rune medium helm as a drop from lesser demons.
Ooh.
Not only was the rune longsword better than the adamant two-hander, all you needed was 32,000 GP, not hundreds of hours of smithing, or the patience to sign up for dozens of RuneScape accounts. Plus,
Ooh.
since it only needed one hand, you could do stuff with your other hand, like wear a shield with it for extra defense. I can only imagine the disappointment Blue felt when she saw this. This might seem like some cruel joke played by Jagex against Blue, but runite had been in the works for a while. It had been shown off by Jagex staff in-game to players multiple times, and was even going to be purple at first. Perhaps they changed the color to blue in honor of Blue Rose. I have nothing to actually back that up, I just think it would be cool. Now, even if Blue Rose had the smithing level to make these newly released items, she couldn't. Runite rocks actually didn't exist yet, so it was impossible to smith any of them. But this day wasn't entirely a loss for Blue and her empire. Jagex had also updated banks to be able to hold items. This would make managing resources and trading much easier. No more need for complicated mules. Except Blue hated it. She felt the bank was too slow and preferred to use mules instead. She had begun smithing in much more remote areas far away from other players to avoid attention, something that she could only accomplish with mules. But I mean, nothing was stopping her from just continuing to use mules instead of the bank, right? Well, Andrew had actually told the player base that when item banks were released, mules would no longer be allowed. I don't think anyone who continued to use mules after this update ever actually got banned, but being such a high-profile player, Blue couldn't take this risk. Blue's empire would take another huge hit in the following weeks. She would announce on the tip.it forums that she would now be smithing any adamant item that players wanted for free. All they would have—
Wait, hold up. Guys, I want you guys to read this real quick. I'm hugely sorry to all past customers who may feel cheated, but circumstances change and I can't sit back and let people think they're pissing on me. If you act like a dog, don't be surprised to get a bitch in return. What? Are you liking this video? You are, aren't you? Aren't you? Well, if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment down telling me what you want to see next, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't. Who knows? You'll have to keep watching, don't you? This is kind of insane, but also go off queen, I guess. Holy shit. And she's still with Demonic, by the way. She's still Demonic's babe. Damn.
That she would now be smithing any adamant item that players wanted for free. All they would have to do is bring her the adamant bars, or the ore plus the runes needed to cast Superheat item, a spell that turns ores into bars without the need for a furnace. Her reason for this change is because some community members had grown tired of Blue's monopoly and wanted to do something about it. They had decided to begin funding a few smithers who were close to her level, in exchange for getting free adamant gear when they could make it. If Blue didn't begin offering free adamant, it's possible these smithers would soon pass her in level, and they had, in her words, a whole army of players mining for them. Blue could no longer make the best gear in the game, and had lost her main way of making money. Regardless, she continued smithing as she didn't want to lose her rank 1 spot.
She lost her fucking job, guys. Oh my god. People were sick of the monopoly and she lost her job. That is insane. 07's in the chat for Blue Rose.
On August 13th, 2001, Jagex would release the Wilderness, a huge stretch of land on the northern part of the map where PKing was enabled everywhere. They would remove the PKer and non-PKer system and make everywhere a safe zone aside from the Wilderness. The Wilderness was a very important update for Blue, because inside it were the first ever runite rocks. A large variety of new rune weapons and armor that had never been released before would now be smithable too. At the time, Blue was 84 smithing, so with a Dwarven Stout, she'd be able to boost to 85, the exact level needed to smelt runite ore into runite bars. However, she was far from the mining level needed to mine runite, 85, but she planned ahead for this, and had made friends with most of the highest level miners in the game, who, when the Wilderness released, were just days away from hitting 85 mining. Some would give her the ores for free, others would give her some in exchange for a smithed item, and she would also use her now massive bank link to buy some. The finished products would sell for way more than the cost of the ore, except for rune full helms, because along with the wilderness, Jagex also quietly introduced greater demons, which could drop them. She was now making money again thanks to rune, but as her levels continued to rise, so did the amount of controversy surrounding her monopoly. Blue Rose's reputation was and had been in a really weird spot for a while. I dug through hundreds of forum posts while researching for this video, and on multiple occasions, she was called both the nicest person in this game, while others called her the worst. Everyone had their own reasons for believing which was true, but it mainly seems to boil down to if she would give them the item they wanted. A clan named the Holy Order even hated her so much that they would place a 1 million GP bounty on her head. Anyone who killed her in the wilderness and could prove it would receive the prize. Unfortunately, whether they paid up or not has been lost to time. On September 22nd, 2001,
that is like max level hater behavior. That is like massive like hater level. What the shit? I can't imagine like having someone place like $1 million bounty on me. Oh my god. I mean, million gold bounty like in the game, but you know, still like what?
Blue would reach 92 smithing, meaning with a boost, she could now make the rune square shield, the new best shield available. Knowing how crazy players went for adamant kite shields, they'd lose their minds for the first rune shield in the game. Blue could make absolute bank off of these, but much like with adamant kites, she once again said she wouldn't be making any, except for some for Demonic and her friends. In a forum post, she explains why. To be honest, I've seen enough of the two-faced nasty side of too many RuneScape players through free smithing to even consider making them widely available. It's plain as day, 85% of people are just polite to my face to get what they want to make a profit.
Damn.
She was no longer worried about other smiths catching up. By making adamant items for the general public for free, she had crushed their plans and severely stunted their leveling. Plus, she could still make money without making rune squares, as other rune items were still in demand. Although, much like with adamant kite shields, she would quickly change her mind. She would post 2 days later, I may as well trade the odd rune square. I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't, so I'll just do what I damn well feel like. She was right. If she kept the shields exclusive, players would complain that they couldn't have one. But if she sold the shields to the public, they would just complain that her prices were too high.
Honestly, she's so valid though. She's actually so fucking valid though. I cannot fault her logic, and she's absolutely right. Like, they're gonna fucking hate her regardless if she keeps it like her boyfriend and his friends only, you know, and their friends only, and like people are gonna be mad. And if she like and like if she has like the opportunity to make a little like, you know, buck off of it, I don't see why she shouldn't do it. Like, they're gonna be mad at her anyways.
One day after Blue unlocked rune square shields, her haters would get a big reason to celebrate. On September 23rd, 2001, Jagex would release the Dragon Slayer quest, and along with it, a new shop where you could purchase the rune plate mail body. This would be a big blow to her potential profits. If this item had never been released in this shop and players had to wait for Blue to get 99 smithing to make them, I'm almost certain she would have earned hundreds of millions of GP selling them. Instead, anyone could buy one for just 65,000 coins. Fun fact, the reason that the price of 65,000 was chosen was because the max cash stack at the time was just 65,535 coins. If you picked up any more than that, it would actually start a second stack of coins in your inventory. On September 28th, 2001, Blue would achieve 99 magic. She had been using all of the runes she was given in exchange for her smithing services to level the skill. Not only was she the second person ever to get a 99, it was in one of the most expensive skills in the game. It was a great day for Blue, even if she didn't see the level up message in chat due to how many people were surrounding her asking for a rune square shield. Now, with magic out of the way, she set her sights on crafting, and
that would suck so bad. Imagine not seeing like the fucking notification that you've hit like max cap because people are asking you for like a dumb shield. Oh my god, I would tilt off the face of the earth. I'm not even kidding. Maybe I'm a hater. I don't know. Am I a hater, guys? I don't know. I'll think about it. But yeah, big blow to her empire. I guess it's kind of an empire, right? You're not seeing the thing because everyone's pestering you is insane.
And future items she sold would often need to be paid for in crafting materials. Throughout the course of October and November, she would slowly continue to gain levels, unlocking more and more powerful weapons and armor. Thankfully for her, Jagex wouldn't release any new rune items in shops or from monsters during this time. By the end of November, she had managed to reach level 98 smithing, meaning with a boost, she could now smith every item in the game. Most notably, the powerful rune two-handed sword, the new best weapon in the game. Players report that the first few swords sold anywhere from 1 to 3 million GP each.
Damn.
But seeing as how much the adamant kite shield sold for earlier in this video, I wouldn't be surprised if they sold for even higher. Much like adamant square shields and adamant kite shields, the rune longsword and rune two-hander looked exactly the same. So if you wanted to lie to people that you were rich, you just wear a rune longsword without a shield. I know some of you watching did this. It's okay though, I know I would have done it too.
That is so goofy.
Although, unlike the shields from before, the two-hander was an incredibly strong upgrade over the longsword, so its high pricing made a lot more sense. On December 13th, 2001, Blue Rose would finally reach her goal of 99 smithing. This would make her the first person ever to have two 99s in the game. Despite having more wealth than she knew what to do with, she would continue to play RuneScape for the next few years, and even reached rank 2 on the overall high scores in May of 2002.
Wow.
But as more time went on, her influence and name recognition would dramatically fade. Other players would also reach 99 smithing in the following months, such as Musashi22, and even some guy named Zezima. This would cause the rune two-hander to dramatically fall in price, and signal the end of Blue's monopoly and the death of her best moneymaker. The new best gear in the game, Dragon, would have pieces released throughout 2002 and 2003, but none of them could be made through smithing. They were all either obtained from monsters or shops. The only
I'm gonna be for reals. I still hate how RuneScape. Okay, RuneScape's serious business, right? But when you actually zoom in on the player models, it just looks like your guy's just bonking the other person on the head, right? Would you be able to do this? No. Honestly, I don't know. It depends on how deep into it I am. Because I do love mindlessly grinding. I very much do like mindlessly grinding. I probably could reach 99 in something in RuneScape, but I don't know if I could be that crazy. But yeah.
The only exception to this was the Dragon Square Shield. One half of it was purchasable through the Legends Guild shop, and the other as a rare drop from some monsters. The two halves could then be combined on an anvil, which would only require level 60 smithing. So you want to make an adamant dagger? Yeah, you'll need 70 smithing for that. Best shield in the game? Ah, yeah, man, 60's good. It almost makes the pre-smithing rework level requirements seem reasonable. When RuneScape 2 launched in early 2004, Blue would continue playing the game, but she quit soon after. It's not known exactly why she quit, but it was objectively a very different game from Classic, and she was wealthy enough to do whatever she wanted, maybe even too wealthy. There's no credible sources on what her bank value really was at the time, but the number 3 to 4 billion gets thrown around a lot. Doing some napkin math, assuming she had 4 billion, that's more than enough to buy the best gear in the game, every rare item, and still have, I don't know, 3.5 billion left over. Fast forwarding a decade, she would briefly return in 2015, but under a different display name, and would quit again soon after. Since then, she's largely vanished from the internet, and nobody from the RuneScape Classic community seems to have any contact with her. So no one is really sure what she's up to these days, and it's even believed that her original account was hacked, so her massive coffers are now gone. But her legacy and impact on this game's history is something that will never be forgotten. Remember that video I mentioned about
I'm gonna be for reals. I don't think she was the bad guy in this situation. Tell me what you guys think. Do you think she was the bad guy? I don't think she was. I think she is a legend. I think a lot of the things that she did were very reasonable, and it was well, in that situation, would I have chosen to do it too? Probably. She was just a girl boss. She was. It's kind of insane. She played a game like a pro when everyone was playing like children. I honestly think that she was playing RuneScape in her own way, She wasn't playing it the same way other people wanna, the typical experience, but she was playing it in her own way and she liked it. So, I do admire her for that.